Welcome back to the Blurred Wire. We are talking about Blue Beetle today. Just came into theaters this past Friday. And honestly, just to get right to it, I think Blue Beetle's the best DCE movie that's been released. I mean, I couldn't find anything I didn't like about it. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to do very well at the box office. I think it only grossed like 25 million, 30 million in the opening weekend, which is really bad. That's really bad. That's worse than Fury of the Gods did earlier this year, and that's a movie that some people liked, but still ended up being a box office flop. I remember even trying to find showtimes for it. Like most theaters don't think it's going to be do so poorly that they haven't really opened up a lot of slots for it. The only thing that's really helping is it doesn't have a lot of competition right now. The next movie coming out is Gran Turismo. So potentially, if it starts to build up some momentum, if people start talking about it, if people start liking it, maybe it'll stay in theaters for a little bit longer and be able to take some more slots. But it's definitely going to have to do it organically because their theaters are not giving the big slots that they gave out to The Flash and to Shazam, where, there were showtimes like every 30 minutes. Like Blue Beetle, it looks like they're only showing it one after the other in like one or two theaters. So if you get a chance to go see it, I would highly recommend it. I'm going to start this review off spoiler free and then kind of get into more spoilers. So we'll try to start it off spoiler free right now. But like I said, instant reaction. It was fantastic. They knew the strongest thing about this movie would be the family aspect of it. And they didn't, hide that in the trailers. It was obvious that they were going full blown family, everything. Like the whole story wanted you to really feel about family. And I think they succeeded. I mean, it didn't feel like it was like forced down your throat. Like, the Fast and Furious franchises, like they didn't start off by being about family, but somehow that kind of became the theme. And now it feels like every single movie, they just like shove that at you over and over again. Like family is important. Cause that's what it leans on. Like, but after a little bit, it starts to become like over gratuitous and be like, okay, I thought these movies were about cars. So anyway, back to Blue Beetle. It did the family theme very well. Loved seeing how Jaime's family affected his decisions and the things that he did. The plot made sense, which you don't always say about DC movies, honestly. Like, I think Fury of the Gods did so poorly because the plot was so convoluted. There were like things that would happen that just didn't really make sense. And it just felt like they stacked like a lot of subplots on together. But like Blue Beetle was very simple, straightforward of the plot. It went in one direction. Felt like Fury of the Gods was like going here, and like rotated all around. This movie, Blue Beetle, moved in one direction. It was streamlined, it was cohesive. I thought all the actors played really well off of each other, and the special effects were super good. Like in The Flash, some of the people were complaining about like the Flashpoint special effects, especially when they started like trying to do a tribute to all the DC heroes, which kind of worked, but kind of didn't. But to me, even there, like Blue Beetle's CGI looked great. The action scenes were great. They got me excited. And again, I know Blue Beetle from Young Justice. So seeing him live action was pretty exciting for me because I always loved seeing him in Young Justice because all of his scenes in Young Justice always looked super cool. So seeing him in live action was kind of a big moment for me and anyone who, knows Young Justice and was, kind of raised on it and watched it a lot. So it was big for me. I definitely think that overall, though, Blue Beetle was a success. I think it was a great show. Blue Beetle was a great movie. And I can't really talk about it more without getting into spoilers. So I'm going to go ahead. Huge spoiler warning right here. If you made it this far in the video and you don't want to be spoiled, please don't continue listening. So I had to go see it opening weekend because I know how bad the internet is with spoilers and a lot of things were going to reveal it for me. So, but on this one, like I said, the plot to me there was no part of it that I was like, that can't really happen or that doesn't look realistic. All of it made sense. It made sense what they did. I love what they did with Ted Kord because in the comics, Ted Kord was the first Blue Beetle. And so in this one, they kind of made it so like he had the scarab, but the scarab didn't choose him. So his daughter knows all about it. And, I liked the conflict between her and her aunt, because she was the classic businesswoman, evil, Susan Sarandon played the role. It was like typical evil corporate person wants to sell all these suits to whoever. She was trying to make suits based off of the Scarab. But the nuance that I liked about it was the fact that she built this company with her grandfather, she said, and then Ted, her grandfather, still left it to Ted. And so it kind of brings up like a glass ceiling um, reasoning or conflict between them because, it's just like the patriarchy to just leave the company to the grandfather still thought that his grandson would run the company better than his granddaughter, even though she was the one that helps him build it. He still felt like the son was the best choice just because he was a man. And so like that gave a little more nuance to her character. Like if she had just been evil and like took over the company or something, like that was good and I liked that. And yeah, so the plot, makes sense. Like she wanted to use the Scarab to create these mechanized suits that she could sell for a lot of money. And sometimes the villain's storyline or plan doesn't have to be um incredibly like evil or like I'm just gonna kill a bunch of people. It can just be as simple as money. Um and wanting to unlock the Scarab. Like, she was ruthless in her way about it, willing to kill people, lay people off, all of the stuff. But like I said, to me, that as an origin worked. And that worked as part of her storyline. So, and I guess the basic idea that they did with Ted Kord is that he discovered the Scarab a long time ago and he became a superhero known as Blue Beetle, basing all this technology off of the Scarab. But the Scarab never chose him. And that I actually like as well because it makes Jaime more than just a successor to the Blue Beetle. It makes Jaime the true Blue Beetle because the Scarab chose him. It didn't choose Ted, but he got to study it and build all this technology off of it, but it still didn't choose him. So that's cool because it's a difference between Ted and Jaime. Jaime's not just the replacement, because in DC Comics, I'm pretty sure Ted Kord had the Scarab himself. And so for this to say like, no, it didn't choose him, but it chose Jaime, I like that. That gives depth and it gives Jaime a different origin. He's not just like a copy of Ted or he's not just the next guy up. Like, no, Jaime is the one that can actually unlock the Scarab's power. Something that Ted Kord couldn't do because the Scarab didn't choose him. As far as the main villain, like again, in Young Justice, the main villain of the Scarab is Blue Beetle and the Reach, which I think they could go into, which would be really cool. In Young Justice, of course, it was kind of like a big crossover thing, and so maybe that could be something that comes along in the future if James Gunn DCU does well, and it could be kind of a crossover. But overall, I like what they did with the origin of the Scarab because we still don't know how it got here or why it's here. We just know here's what happened with it. So it really left the door open. I kind of thought with this one they were going to give it an origin story from I thought they weren't really going to approach the Reach or use the Reach at all, which again is a big storyline in Young Justice, but they left that open, right? So like this story affects what's happening now. Bringing in the Reach for the first villain is a little too big for just an origin story. So, but by leaving it open, they can go in that direction or not, which again, definitely liked, really enjoyed. I think I would say the only thing George Lopez was good in this movie. I wasn't expecting his role to be so big, but it makes sense because it's George Lopez. Because like he's not playing the father, he's playing the uncle. But based upon the way they did the plot, he has a good amount of the story, and it makes sense because they needed some like star pull, to bring into this movie, and I think he does fine in his role. I would have liked to see a little bit more. Like if I had to choose, I would probably say I could have used a little less of him and a little more of Jaime and Jenny getting to know each other. Jaime and Jenny getting to know each other because I think Zolo Marindwa did fantastic in his role, and I think he actually had pretty good chemistry with her. Some people say they didn't really see it. I saw it and I wanted to see more of it, and I think that'll make a pretty fun dynamic for Ted to realize that the Blue Beetle that not only did the Scarab, like it, well, to the end credit scene again, huge spoiler. End credit scene, it reveals that Ted Kord is still alive. So somehow they're gonna find Ted Kord, and eventually we're gonna bring him in and learn about him. And I think it's gonna be pretty funny for him to know that not only did the Scarab not choose him, but his daughter. That the Scarab didn't choose Ted, but chose Jaime. His daughter also chose Jaime. So I just think that's kind of funny. But anyway, the way that the plot and everything outlined, to me, it all made sense. You know, the way that he found himself meeting Jenny, you know, she's trying to be a good person with this company that's technically left to her, but right now her aunt is in charge of it. And the way that kind of brought Jaime into contact with Jenny, which brought him into contact with the Scarab, and a whole storyline of him flying around and everything. And I thought it was funny. I didn't like burst out of my seat laughing, but you know, it was enough to enjoy it. I didn't think any of the jokes made me cringe or anything like that. And then, like I said, the way they built up the plot line made sense. It was just very basic. They kind of, okay, they got the Scarab, and it was like, next thing, okay, we got to go to Ted's house. They went to Ted's house, and then from there, she attacked his family. And by the time that he got over there, like, I already knew the climax was kind of coming in like the next scene because she attacked his family. And so in that scene, when he got captured and like, you know, his father had the heart attack, which was, I actually felt for it, you know, and we could have got a little bit more of the father, but based upon the way the plot ran, I wouldn't have necessarily changed that. A little bit afterwards, they got to the point where she was stripping the Scarab of its information, of its code. And I really like the way they did that as well, because you could tell in the early stages of that Olmec device, like the Scarab could make any weapon that Jaime thought of. The Olmec didn't have that code part of the Scarab. That's what, you know, Susan Sarandon's character, Victoria, was still trying to unlock. So you could really tell the difference between the first Olmec and the Scarab. And that's why the Scarab was pretty much able to beat, you know, the main villain in the first version of the suit. Because while Jaime doesn't have experience, the suit just doesn't have the same capabilities. It's just kind of built on man-made tech, but it can't just simulate things the way that the Scarab can. The Scarab's like, oh, I could take him out right now. We could just end him right now. And then, you know, I love the way that Jaime was like, no, we're not going to kill anybody. Because again, that's a big thing in Young Justice. Him and the Scarab are always going back and forth at it because the Scarab's like, kill, 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 kill. And he's like, no, we don't do that. But again, the weapon is supposed to be a killing machine. Like, that's what it's for. So I thought all of that was super good. Like I said, the way that the plot moved, the only thing that kind of got overdone, I think, was the scene with his father. I feel like in almost a lot of movies I've seen this year recently, like the one with, the last time I can remember was like Deadpool 2, but even in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, they did it, where the scene where like you're in the afterlife, but not really. So like you're kind of just like it's like supposed to be a scene where like a main character, you think they might die and like they go to the afterlife and they talk to someone that they love, but then they end up coming back. You know, it's like I don't know, it feels a little bit overdone with it. It didn't really do much for me for Rocket when he was having that scene with Alondra. It didn't really do much for me when Jaime was having the scene with his father. I liked that scene. I wish they could have got it while he was still alive, but based upon, again, the way the plot was moving, there wasn't really a way to do that organically for him to encourage his son to become the superhero. And so I would say they probably could have, and even like all of that CGI with it, it all looked good. Like I said, personally, I don't think the movie really needed it to go that like far and above, but like it was this whole scene of like rocks floating and stuff, of like Jaime's imagination of him having this conversation with his father, and then like getting connected with the Scarab and like bringing him back into reality instead of being in the afterlife or whatever. Again, those scenes never really do much for me. That might just be my personal preference, but I still think the scene was done well, and like all the CGI looked good. And so like if they wanted to save some money on their budget, they could have reworked that whole scene and just not had quite as much CGI, because I'm sure that scene was like the bulk of the CGI throughout the movie. But anyway, after that, you know, he has to go through this thing to, and I like how, you know, so like before they get to that scene, his father has a heart attack, and that allows Victoria Cord to capture Blue Beetle and like begin to strip the code, so that way the Olmec suit can start creating weapons the way that Blue Beetle suit does. And I do like that the family went to go see him, get to go save him. In the trailers, when I saw all of like the Blue Beetle tech, like the Blue Beetle ship and all that, I thought it was going like a little bit too much, and I didn't really like it. And I was like, that feels like it's going to be kind of overdone. But once I saw it and like I made once they explained why that's all there, it made perfect sense, because it was like, oh, Ted Cord was a billionaire, or, you know, who was rich, and he became the superhero by studying this Scarab. And since he couldn't actually get in the suit, he made all this stuff based upon the suit from studying the suit. And so to me, that all made a lot of sense, and it was really cool to see. I feel like it was all done very tastefully. And watching his family come to save him was pretty cool. I thought The grandma she was good. Sometimes it was like a little over the top, and I think they had to do that to again try to attract people to see this movie. Like the fact that she's in her nightgown for the entire movie is like a little cheesy and weird because like again, no matter what's going on, like I'm sure if you're gonna rescue your family, you're gonna drop everything and go save them. But who's gonna do it in a nightgown? Really? But anyway, like I said, not enough to take away from the movie because the rest of it was so fantastic. And I'm actually like, I would probably go see it again right now just to watch the fight scene between Jaime and the Indestructible Man. Because at the end, the Olmec suit gets finalized with the code, but Jaime is able to break out of the system that was going to kill him. And so they have this fight, and the fight actually looks really good. And like Jaime is outclassed because this suit is bigger and stronger, but because he's made a connection, because he has the actual scarab and he connected with it, he ends up coming out on top. And the scarab has to be the one that stops him from killing this guy. And I think that's pretty cool. Because, you know, he probably blames this guy. I don't know if this guy should have been the one to kill the father. The father dying of a heart attack makes sense. Either one, I think, would have been fine. But I like that the scarab ended up holding back Jaime at the end. And so, yeah, really, for me, everything about this movie worked. It's a shame. Like, if this had come out earlier this year, like, if this had come out instead of Fury of the Gods, instead of talking about James Gunn and the DCEU, we would have been talking about how to revive the DCEU with Blue Beetle. People would have been talking about this movie is so great. Let's get Zack Snyder back up in here. Let's see if we can resurrect this thing and not necessarily turn it over to James Gunn. Or like you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have been like, hey, DC needs a fresh reboot. Because people have been feeling DC needs a fresh reboot after Black Adam. But then again, Shazam let everybody down. Flash let everybody down. Box office and just by the movies themselves. But if Blue Beetle had come out earlier this year, if it had come out when Shazam did, especially because it really wouldn't have had that much competition. Because I think Flash didn't work because there was a lot of competition around it. Across the Spider-Verse was drowning it out. You had Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, Mission Impossible coming, and then by the time Barbenheimer came out, like it was already done. Like the Flash was not big enough of a blockbuster to survive that. But Shazam coming out in March, like there really wasn't much competition for it, just Creed. And like if Blue Beetle had come out in March of this year, I feel like it would have done a lot better. It would have had a lot of those same shot slots that Shazam Fury of the Gods did. And I feel like Shazam didn't do so well because it was so convoluted. It was hard for people to talk about it and like it and get more people to see it. Because it was like, yeah, what happened again? I don't know. There's like a staff and like some stuff and a dragon. And it's like, when you think about it, it's like, I don't really remember that movie very well. But Blue Beetle, I think it's going to stick with people for a long time. If you choose to go see it, if you go see it, you're doing yourself a favor more than you are doing the movie itself a favor. I think it was a fantastic film. So yeah, I highly encourage anyone to watch it. If you listened all the way to the video, like again, sorry for all the spoilers. However, go see it again. Tell other people to see it. I think we're gonna be able to see. I don't know if we'll get a Blue Beetle 2 or a Blue Beetle 3. I think Jaime Reyes by Zolo Merwendwa was likable enough to see him in other projects that James Gunn can greenlit. But again, as far as like the DCU as a whole, like 2024, I guess is probably going to be a year off from any DC movies. I guess we're still going to get Aquaman 2 at the end of this year, and it's probably going to do worse than Blue Beetle did. And then by the time James Gunn takes over in 2025, I don't know. If Superman Legacy, with the way that budgets are going and everything now, and we'll be like 5 years removed from the pandemic, if Superman Legacy doesn't gross at least as much as Matt Reeves' Batman, I don't see how much further James Gunn DCEU can go. Because even if that movie breaks even, Superman Legacy, I don't think it's going to be enough for Warner Bros. To want to keep making DC movies. Especially when their Barbie movie just outgrossed every single DC movie that's come out this year and had probably like a third of the budget. They're going to be like, no. As much as like we think DC would have been a good idea, the MCU, whatever, it's not profitable anymore because it's not as profitable anymore. It's just not. So we'll see. But anyway, overall, Blue Beetle, fantastic film. Highly recommend that you could take your whole family. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do in the future. It's sad because like the seeds for a sequel aren't there quite as like, rock solid. Like, until like right now, phase four, I think that's what we're feeling in the MCU, where like sequels and stuff for everything. There's a lot of storylines that we don't know if we're ever gonna get tied up. But like in phases one, two, and pretty much three, every storyline, every sneak to the future, every sequel, all of that, all of those were paid off and we knew it was coming and we were like, oh man, I'm excited to see it. This with Blue Beetle, I'm excited to see what happens in the future, but I don't know if it's coming. I don't know if we're going to get a Blue Beetle 2 or 3 or if he's ever going to show up in other DC projects. I don't know how James Gunn is going to work him in or how he's going to do all that. And a lot of it's probably going to have to do with how this movie performs. So we'll see. We're rooting for the best. But again, still a fantastic film, especially for a very lesser known character. So yeah, I would encourage anybody to see Blue Beetle. And until next time, Blurs.